Hi, it's Sandy Parker, and welcome to Crafting for Almost Everyone. The other day, I put up a video using craft cardstock and a big background stamp, and I used the white pigment ink, and then I offset a different color. Well, I got a lot of comments from people, and two in particular said, man, they're going to have to go out and buy some background stamps because they want to try that technique. And I said, how about if I remake the card with smaller stamps so that just about anyone would have some stamps to be able to accomplish it. So all I'm going to use currently is one feather stamp and one sentiment stamp on my background. I am going to use the MISTI because I'm going to offset, but you can use a clear acrylic block, and I'm going to show you how you'll be able to do that as well, because I don't want you to think because you don't have a tool like this you can't do it. We're going to start, let me tell you first, the stamp set I'm using is from Paper Tray Ink. It's called Feather Finery, and it came with dies, but I'm not going to use the dies. And I'm making this card specifically for two of my viewers that asked for it. One lady's name is Sherri C, and the other one, I hope this is how you say this, her name is Nenna, N-E-N-N-A. I apologize if I said that wrong, Nenna. I really should have asked you how to pronounce it. Then, my friend Becky had sent me that big box of things, and in it were these stickers, and in it have these feathers. So I thought I might figure out a way to color one of these and stick it in the inside, and also figure out if I could stick it on the envelope as well. So we're going to play with those too. So let's get started. I put my feather in my MISTI. Let me show you close up if I can. Can you see the 6-inch mark? What I did is I lined the end of my quill, is that what you call it? The end of the feather, the very tip. Let me show you if I could find there's my pointy. I'll get my pointy tool and show you. I put the little end of the feather right there, which is on the grid mark. It's right on this pink grid line, if you can see that. And so that way I know exactly where I started that feather. You're going to make sure when you do this technique that you need to have some way to make sure that you know exactly where your images are. I put my sentiment here for now. I'm not stamping it. I'm just using that as kind of a guide to say to myself, don't mess with that area of the stamp, or of the card. With me? Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the pigment Unicorn White Hero Hues ink, and we're going to stamp up our feather. I did have another comment from someone who said, you know, if you made this with metallic ink, it would look a lot better. So I'm all about change and trying everything out, so we're going to be using a brand new ink pad from Encore called Ultimate Metallic Copper. So that's going to be our offsetting color for once we stamp all of our feathers. So let's do our very first feather. Remember, we're keeping it, so it's going to go off the page. I'm going to get my cloth and really rub it well so that we have it. Get it in the picture, probably not even in the image. I just want to make sure we get a really good impression of the feather. Oh, that's beautiful. I'm so happy with that. I'm thinking I want my feather to look like it's kind of floating around. So I'm going to wipe my feather off a little bit so that when I lay it back down, because I won't be able to move the paper to accommodate it, because I'm also going to be moving the image in height. If I was just moving it, you know, from side to side, that would be one thing, but I'm also going to be trying to move it in height. Remember that we're going to need a little bit extra room because we're going to stamp the copper over that. So that's why I'm moving the feather up and over as much as I am. Ink it again. I watched a video today where someone talked about making sure that you open this door the way that works best for you, and I am opening it. Even though I'm left-handed, I sometimes stamp right-handed, but I'm left-handed, so that's why I have my door this way. Most of you will have this unit flipped around so that you see it the other way. I did buy a Stamp Perfect, and I'm making sure that I love it before I do a video on it. I'm going to stamp that a little bit more because down at the bottom I don't think the white is as clean as I want it to be. I want to make sure that when I do the video on the Stamp Perfect that I've made sure I've really played with it enough that I feel comfortable with it. And right now I have an email into the company to ask them a couple questions because I don't, you know, I take this seriously. If I'm going to recommend something to you guys, I really want to make sure that I know everything I need to know about it first, if I can. Wipe this off again. We're going to move it. Let's see where my... If I put this down here, I could, in essence, float that feather there. That's not enough floating, though. Maybe I'll turn it more. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to turn it a little bit. I just want to make sure I have enough room for my sentiment. That clearly the sentiment stuck, but the feather did not play along. There we go. This should be a pretty fast and easy card to make, and you should be able to whip out a bunch of them if you wanted to. I usually, someone asks me when I make things, do I make a lot of them? And unless I find a technique that works really well to, you know, do multiples, I usually only make one because I like to send the things I make, and I like to make them personalized for the people that I'm making them for. So that's my scoop on that. I think I'm going to change my sentiment out and put my feathers more like they're floating. I like the look of that better. So let's get this feather ink up. I also have, this set came with these really cool backgrounds of these little teeny tiny dots. I thought, wouldn't those be fun? So right now I'm contemplating those because I just don't know if I wanted this. I think I want this to be kind of just clean and elegant looking. Oh, not enough ink on that. Let's get inking, Sandy. One more. For those of you who've watched my black ink video, I apologize, it was so long. I didn't know how to do it, that I could show it so that that you would see. Maybe I shouldn't have shown everything, but I didn't know. I wanted to make sure you saw that what it looked like when everything was wet and you know, the mediums were wet, and I rubbed it on it. Anyway, let me dry this and I'll be right back. So I got this acrylic block right here. Can you see it? It's about that long. And I'm going to put my feather on there, and I'm going to use this as my stamping image. And I'm going to make sure, hopefully, that you can see this really well. I'm going to ink it up with my copper ink. If I didn't stamp it really well, that's okay. We can stamp it again. What I did is I just offset. I followed the image, and especially the stem. I knew that would be the problem. This isn't dark enough. We're going to have to go with a darker color. Maybe I'll do a tritone. We're going with it. We're going to do a little tricolor on this bad boy. I think I have enough room between each of my feathers to be able to do that, but I want to make sure. Okay, back to, you want to line up your feather at the bottom, that tip, that little piece. That's going to be the thing that you want to angle your feather, your new feather, right beside, and try and get as close to it as possible without touching it. And then you want to make sure you press it down and get the whole image to transfer. See how that, the feather point, I don't know, can you see that little feather point? See how the feather point lines up with the other feather point? That's what we're shooting for. I'm going to do a layer of copper, and then I think I'm going to do a layer of like a lighter brown. Maybe the color I used the other day. Again, we're going to be right beside our first feather, and then we're just going to stamp, and hopefully there's that one, and then the last one. Then what I'm going to do is I mean, I don't necessarily know that the MISTI is of any benefit to this, because if you can look through your acrylic blocks, you can definitely do this, because they're not in a straight row. If they were in a straight row, all you'd have to do is move the MISTI, or the paper within the MISTI from side to side. It'd be no big deal. But since these are not at the same distance, ooh, that's pretty. Do you think that's enough color, or do you think I should go for a third color? I'm going for a third color because I think it'll be cooler with a third color. Whenever you do another ink, I think it's always important to test it out on the same color cardstock to see how it's going to blend. And this is what the Cognac looks like. I really do think that that'll be a nice dark tone to add to my feathers. And because my feathers are so far apart, I don't have a worry that I'm going to overrun them. I think they'll be perfectly fine with this. And my sentiment I'm going to make across the bottom. So we're going to do exactly what we did with the second layer, and that is I'm going to turn the card because it's easier for me to see the stems on the sides. And we're going to make it, if my head's in the way, I apologize. We're doing the same thing. We're going to follow the stem at the bottom. I'm sorry, it's not a stem. I don't remember what it's called. Burr? I don't know. What do you call that? Anyway, the very tip of the feather. Quill? I know when they used them for pens, they called that a quill, but I didn't know if that was what they called the very bottom of it. I don't know. I'm not up on my feather lingo. If I was, you'd be the first to know. I don't love it as much as I thought I would, but I still think it's okay. I always like to be honest, you know, if it doesn't scream my name, I'm not going to lie and go, oh, I love it. Here's the second one. And you really want to hold it down because remember you're going over ink and paper, so you want to hold it there long enough to ensure that your whole image transfers. I do like it now that I see them. It's cool. It's a cool look. And this one is definitely, it's not just a mock 3D. This one truly is 3D because we've got 3 colors going on. I got to be careful of that third or the fourth feather, making sure I don't end up touching it. I don't really want to do that. Okay. And then last but not least is our last feather. I might end up putting my sentiment on a strip across the bottom. I don't know. I haven't decided that yet. These are the things we just leave till the last minute, huh? Okay, last one. Making sure. Good transfer. Okay. So there's our feathers so far. Okay, let's get our white pencil, and all I'm going to try and do is where the white line comes down, I'm going to try and put a little bit more color wherever I can, closest to the next color. I'm going to make it more like shading. I don't want to ruin the look of the little white pieces coming out of there, but on the other hand, I really want to make it more white than it currently is on the edges. And I'm not sure that I love this, but it is, you know, you can see the white a lot more when you do this, so I'm going to stick to it a little bit. I'm not going crazy with it like I could. And I'm not, and if you try to go into the brown, it turns it a yellow color. So I want to scribble that off my pencil to make sure it's not there. And then I want to just stick to these edges to get that white on the edges, more of shadow. It's very simple. Let's close it and see what we think of it closed. This is one of my favorite bone folders. It's from Fiskars, and it's very inexpensive, like $2 when it's on sale at any of the big craft stores, but I love the way it's shaped. It just works for me because it's shaped so well. It's got that weird golf club look to the bottom of it, but I really like the shape of it. because I heat set this so many times, that's why it's doing that. Okay, let's go to our stickers and see how they're coming along. Maybe I'll go for that great big one. What's the chances I could ruin that? And I think I'm going to go with the darker brown ink on it too. Can I get it off? No. Oh, I ripped. I'm like a bull in a china shop. Okay. Luckily, I ripped it at a spot that I think you can rip it at. Now, okay. Gently, Sandy. Come on. Don't ruin another one. You're clueless. Alright. Alright, I think I can fake that as the rip is on purpose. This time, I'm using the Cognac and seeing, I'm just going to rub it in. Hopefully you saw that. If you didn't, this is what I'm doing. Just rubbing it in like that. And maybe that'll make it really stick better. And since it's a hybrid, maybe that'll also make a difference. I'm not going to heat set it because I did heat set the other ones, and maybe that's why it kind of melted. I mean, I moved it around a lot, so it wasn't like it was, now where to the ripped area. I moved the heat gun around, so it wasn't like I was just burning the plastic, but obviously I'm a little bit too rough with these. The nature of my system is just go crazy, I guess. Okay. Whew, that was lucky. I think I'm happy that I did that. Alright, but I really like this one, and it gives you a lot of room to write. I'm not going to close it now because that's still wet, and now we're going to make our sentiment. So let me grab my sentiment and what I want to put it on, and I'll be right back. So next step is we're going to do our sentiment, and I wanted to show you how to make sure your sentiment is straight. I'm going to be using this punch in the end, and I'm going to punch it out of there, but in the meantime I need to stamp it, and I'm going to stamp it a couple times. I want it to be straight on my stamp. So you take a T ruler if you're using an acrylic block. Now this is in case you don't have a MISTI or another stamping tool, but what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that our T ruler is straight on our bar, and then you're going to make sure your sentiment, of course my sentiment's now upside down, you want to make your sentiment straight on there. Now this is a weird one because the birds of and the feather are two different size fonts, and the feather is much bigger, but I think it's straight. The key is going to be how I stamp it on the paper, and if we can get it to look right in the punch. Now this punch creates what do you call that? I can't think of what it's called. I'll have to think of that, and we'll come up with it. But in the meantime, I'm just gonna, it makes like a label, but it's not a label. Banner? No, it's not a banner. I'm just gonna keep making up words until I come up with it. Okay, birds of a feather. I'm doing it on white paper, and I have to stamp it further down because my punch is kind of weird. You have that punch at the top that punches out part of the banner. I think it's a banner. I don't know if I love this. I might have to emboss it. I'm going to do it again down below, and this time I'm going to throw some embossing powder on it. Clear embossing powder by Ranger. That's what I normally use because it works the best for me. And no, I forgot to use my little pad. Let me see if I can, I'll do a third one. Why not, right? I'll use my little pad right there. That way we'll know that that section is right. And then we'll stamp our sentiment again. Oh, I got the rest of it. I don't want the rest of it right there. And I'm going to have to do that also on the card. I'm going to have to stamp that and make sure it's got embossing powder on it as well. If you can't see this one, I'm just stamping birds of a feather for the 50th time. Okay, then we're going to put a little bit of embossing powder right there. And because I have so much paper going on, I should be able to just dump it back in there, right? Okay, well, let's heat her up, shall we? I guess it looks okay. Let's see if we can punch one of these out. And I'm going to cut this up here. Okay, let's see if we can make this work. So our goal, nope, still too long. I don't actually care if I get the bottom right, you know, this piece, I don't care if I get that right. As I said, I don't really particularly care about the rest of it. I just care about that top. Can I get birds of a feather in that little centerpiece? Let's see if I make it up a little bit more. How's that hit you? Look good? There's a little wee. The sentiment is birds of a feather flock together. Obviously, that's, you know, tried and true. Everyone knows that one. Well, flock together is teeny tiny. So I'm going to put it at the very bottom of our card, hopefully on straight. And because I just did that in the copper ink, which I didn't plan on doing, I'm going to put embossing powder on it because I know it's soaking wet, and this will be a surefire way to make sure that it's dry and covered. Perfect. Let's heat her up. One thing that's nice about embossing powder is if you ever have a sentiment that you don't think you stamped on there dark enough, if you put the embossing powder on it, I got a little powder running amok here. If you put that embossing powder on it, see how it makes it so at least it sticks out more. Alright, well, I had a devil of a time with this whole inking the outside of this paper because everything was a pigment ink, so I couldn't get it to dry and I kept smearing it. So then I had this brilliant idea of finding one of my Sharpies that's bronze, and I'm just going to go around the edge very gently with that, and it should dry so I don't have the big problem I've been having with it. And hopefully this will be, you know, like try number 20. I don't know if you can see this, but I probably have 4 of these glued on top of each other at this point because I wanted to make sure that they, you know, that they all looked right. And every time I glue one down, then I'd have a smudge or something that just didn't make me happy about it. So now the marker idea has made me very, very happy because now I can really ink my edges and make sure everything looks right. Whereas before, not so much. So right now I'm pretty happy with that. Then I just have to ink the edges of these little buggers and not get any more ink on them than I already have, and then we'll be ready to put this card together. So now I'm just going to stick this thing together with some 3-dimensional tape. I want my 3-dimensional tape to be underneath my end pieces, I guess we'll call them. And then I'm going to center it above my flocks together. I'll hold it down a little bit. I think if I need to put a little bit more of the bronze on it, it's very simple at this point. I like it. I don't know if you do, but it is exactly what I said I was going to make, and that is a card that has all of the components of the big card, but without all of the muss and fuss. I could make white dots. Do I want to do those white dots? Let's play with them on the envelope and see if we want to do that or not. So I practiced a little bit with the white ink on the envelope, and I don't know if you can see that, but I think it looks kind of cool. So I'm going to risk it all, and I mean all, and stamp around my feathers. Not over the feathers, I don't think, just around the feathers. So with that being said, I'm taking a stamp that doesn't have a really big amount. I'm going to close my card because I only want it on the front, and I'll know I'll end up with it on the back if I don't. So I'm going to just do a little bit of them there, and then More of them there. Because these are so random, I don't think that anybody's going to say, oh, you just stamped them all exactly the same direction. But in case they do, you can always turn your stamp a little bit. I'm going to try and not cover my... If I can avoid it, I'm trying not to stamp on the feathers. Trying. There is a thinner component to this set where I can stamp, you know, like littler areas. So I'm going to find that little one and see if I can use it instead. And I think I'm only going to put half of it on the stamp. And that way I can control how much of it is inked and make sure that the rest of it doesn't end up. I'll kind of hold that back. Yeah, you've never seen anybody do this technique, right? You're going, geez, that's weird. She's just holding those stamps out of the way. It worked. Sure I don't get anywhere I don't want it if I can avoid it. And then it kind of looks like it's snowing. I don't know. It just gives it a little bit more something. I need to do this little area right in here. I think I'm going to do that. Those. And then another little area right here. So let's get our stamp. I made this for you. I'm not using washi tape on this envelope, and I think that makes sense because I've already done the, you know, this feather with the snow. So here's our card, birds of a feather flocked together. I think it's cute. I hope you like it too. Nenna and Sherri, I hope this gave you the idea of how to do this and make it work for you without using a background stamp, and it still looks 3D. I'm going to just open it because it doesn't want to stay shut. I really appreciate you bearing with me on this, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please give this a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.